Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting distinction between companies, how much invention risk a company takes. So if a company is trying to make something, I think one of the things that's so impressive about an Oculus Rift, this is a very hard thing to make, versus some things, everything's hard to make, but some things are less hard. And I think that you got to think about the crowdfunding campaigns differently. And I want to open it up to questions in a minute, but I'll keep going too. But just one question from all of you. Last time we had an event here, we talked about, maybe not last time, but in the last 2 weeks, we talked about Facebook and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And now we have another wild Facebook acquisition to talk about. So Oculus and a $2 billion acquisition of a crowdfunded company. Just love to get some thoughts. What does this mean for all of us?
It's pretty amazing, right?
It's wild.
I mean, just think that could be your success story. Like, the next story could be right here in this room, and that's the incredible thing about crowdfunding is that it's democratized. That these opportunities are democratized. That it's up to you and it's up to us. It's up to all of us to help to elevate the industry, and this is one of those ways that it's elevating the industry.
I think it's awesome, and I think it's smart. I mean, I think it was Chris Dixon posted the Google Trends in virtual reality, and it was flat. And then suddenly it showed Oculus Rift with a higher curve than a cell phone graph, that Slava showed.
That was really interesting acquisition.
Yeah.
Very much say about it.
Wow, top 10 list of headlines I did not expect to read today.
I thought it was a joke.
Yeah, is it April 1st? Not quite yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me open it up for questions from others, and then I'm happy to take with it.
So,
Maybe you can introduce yourself too.
okay, my name is Vijay Parmar. I'm from a company called Result Corporation. We design services for partner for IoT and Drane. So one question is, with the crowdfunding hardware, you see a lot of consumer pages. And one thing we've thought about is enterprise industrial products, which is actually a pretty big market for hardware today, including for end-to-end. But really, how do you get crowdfunding for the enterprise industrial product?
It's a great question. Crowdfunding, is it only for the hip kids, or is it for industrial buyers too?
Well, it's all a matter of what you're looking to get out of the campaign and looking because again, like Slava's slide showed, that it's not just about funding, it's about the entire process of it. And so when I talk with people, every time I meet with any person, I ask them what are they setting out to accomplish and what are their secondary goals besides money, or like what are the non-monetary benefits. And so what I would talk with you and your clients about is just what else are you looking to get out of it? Is it just for money? Is it what other funding options do you have? Are there other funding options? What are you setting, how are you setting yourself up for success? And because perhaps it's not the only way to get money, but it could be a way to engage more with your client base. Or it could be a way to understand better and get a better community around you. Like the Geek Pulse team did an amazing job of rallying community around granted it was a consumer product, but still they did an incredible job of creating community, a sense of community, and so that could be another avenue that you're going towards.
Yeah, I think that you could crowdfund almost any hardware project. But what you have to remember is that the platform itself, all it does is amplify the message that you give it. That's all it does. So you need to know who your market is, you need to know how to reach them, how to gather them around you, and then figure out the message that will make them click the button. So you have to have your basic sales and marketing skills in order to make it work. The way we did it was we created a community. We invited people to come into our community, and we approached it in a way that we weren't. The idea of raising money was our third reason for doing what it was that we were doing. The first two reasons were, one, to determine if this was a product that anybody liked, and two, to determine if they did like it, what else do they want to do, and then if you like it, please give us your money. Back us, help us bring this to life. But it was the third priority. So we gathered the troops, so to speak, and we engaged them directly to find out what it was that they wanted out of this idea, knowing that we could build it. We were a 3-year-old company that had been building products like this for 3 years and had accolades and positive reviews and lots of press and everything, we already had the credibility, but we wanted to know what it was that they wanted. And I think the reason that it did so well, actually, you know, when you do a crowdfunding campaign, my experience is anyway, if you were to chart it, you know, dollars over time, if you do it well, you get tons of dollars in at the beginning, lots of traffic, and then it typically flattens out, and then at the end,
Yes, the painful middle.
yeah, we call it Death Valley.
Yes.
We call it Death Valley. We hate Death Valley. And the first time we did a crowdfunding campaign, what we were working really hard to do was make that valley less profound. We wanted to bring it up as much as we could, and we failed miserably at it. It was still a successful campaign. We raised $300,000, and you know, that was 100 times more than what we wanted to raise. So we did really well, but we failed at making that valley less profound. When we came over to Indiegogo and we did the Pulse campaign, we took a different strategy, and that was give us your ideas, and every time we got an idea that everybody liked, we would add it to the product. And then what we did was we saw little hills and everything inside that valley.
Yeah, I mean, I think that point about it isn't just about the money is so valid. And I think about the Ubuntu Edge campaign, which was, how big was the goal?
32 million.
Right, and they got to half that? 12.8, okay. It's a huge amount of commitments, and although they didn't hit their goal, you know, Bloomberg was honored to be one of the corporate, you know, backers of it, and just the sense of community it created with enthusiasts about open source was awesome and totally worth it. And obviously we wish it had funded, but you know it didn't, and so it happens. Let me just, before I take the next question, ask something a little bit heretical, which is, you know, now a couple of you have said it isn't about the traffic that a crowdfunding platform can bring because you've got to market it yourself. And then the question is, you've got to cover yours for this, is, you know, I see a lot of startups going through these, should I just roll my own? You know, should I do my own on my site and not have to give up a fee or have more control over the experience or something like that versus working on a platform that has an established flow? How do you guys think about that trade-off? I'm not letting you talk.
What?
No. I mean, you can get last. You can have the last one.
So Kate was telling me about something new that they've actually launched, and I think they've done a pretty good job explaining the difference there. I'll let her,
Oh man, that was just like a layup. You guys talked before, guys.
no, I mean, we are, so a well-executed crowdfunding campaign that exceeds its goal does send a signal to investors. You know, we all looked at Tile with great wonder. That was one that managed to kind of cross the chasm and even launched. You know, I saw friends of mine in Utah sharing it on Facebook and thought, like, oh, that's interesting. You know, here's real, honest to God demand. So, you know, we do like to see a successful campaign. So it's one of these cost-benefit analysis. Is the 5% or slightly less worth it to you? You know, obviously many people feel that it is. There is still a bump from that. Kate could possibly talk about the numbers that are earlier in the data. At the same time, we've seen people go and do it on CrowdTilt, roll their own, and it is a long slog. But I mean, the tools that they've put out have made it a bit more feasible than when Lockatron did it. So.
All right, Brady.
I mean, pretty much what she said.
All right.
is-
Agreement does not need to be spoken.
No, there's
so
something
jazzy.
valuable about that, and I'll say this specifically about Indiegogo is that, first of all, you've already got tons to worry about in managing a campaign. Having to worry about building a platform is something that I don't want to do. In a former life, this is what I coded, so I know what it takes to build a new platform. I don't want to do it. But the other thing you have the people at the platform at Indiegogo who, Ben Bateman, for example, there he is right back there. Within 24 hours of us launching, I got an email from him saying, I'm Ben Bateman from Indiegogo. I saw that you put a campaign out on Indiegogo. I want to help you out. You have 30 minutes for a phone call.
Cool.
And he gave us 4 or 5 really, really good ideas. We implemented them all. 2 of them were huge for us. We never thought of it.
All right, Kate, so what is this magical split the difference product that you have created?
So it's called Indiegogo Outpost, and so it's basically the best of both worlds, where you can host your campaign live on Indiegogo and have all the power of our platform and all of the safety and security and our support and the well. And so you can drive traffic to your website, and you can have it the look and feel of your website while having the power of Indiegogo behind it. So again, it will be live on your website as well as live on Indiegogo.
Awesome. All right, I think I saw a bunch of other questions back here. This tall gentleman, Nathan.
Nathan Brown, and I've got a question for sort of phase 2 of real companies. So excluding the corporates or the existing companies that are sort of bringing out the next line of products, my question is about how you help a product company get to the next phase. And I was working with a fashion company that had a big crowdsourced success on another network. They got to the prototypes, they got it all out, and got into a great product launch, and then the wheels kind of came off. They had plenty of money, but they didn't have as much sort of discipline or backing. They almost had such an easy start at getting out that they fell over when it came to building the company. And so if the real product is a company rather than the first product, how do you help these entrepreneurs through that phase 2 of building the real product, which is the company and all the supply chains and management comes behind it? That's tough.
That's what we do at Having One. We bring in small teams. We try and help them grow. We have engineers that help them work on the prototype. We bring in mentors to help them figure out their plans. I work with them on their hiring and their fundraising and their pitch. And then I stay in touch with them afterwards until they go to
me, and then they when they're looking for more money. And so I'm a 6-stage VC, so that means 500 to $1 million is a typical check size. The reality of hardware is that 500 is not really going to get you very far, particularly not for the company. And so most of the hardware deals we've done have been syndicated among a number of funds that are willing to join together to give $5 million. Interestingly, if you are building a product, if you are a demonstrable success, meaning you've built something before, you're often eligible for something like factor financing. You can get a purchase order from Walmart. There are ways to fund it without taking equity dilution. In an ideal world, that would be possible.
Sorry, really quickly, I guess my question is less about the money.
Okay.
I'm seeing companies fall over because they don't understand basic business. I mean, beyond just sort of getting the prototype off the ground, when you have to start making questions about distribution channels, and you suddenly have to start talking about going across from early adopters online to how do we get this in the store, or how do we look at wholesale pricing, double ups, and things like that.
Sure, and some of that is who you hire. And so,
Which is absolutely about it.
Yes, and that's where I was going to go with that. So your venture raise should not be so much about building your product as it should be about building your team. And so your company fails if you haven't built a good team. Your company fails if you haven't built a good brand. And these are two things that are actually closely tied together. Nest's third hire, their first two, besides the founding team, their first two were engineers. Their third was their director of marketing and sales, who basically put together a strategy that said, we are a consumer electronics company. We are not a commodity thermostat, right? And so there was having a really clear brand ideal established from day one is critical to surviving in a store, which is something that you have to do if you're building a physical product, whether that's for be Amazon or Walmart. But I could go on about this for hours, but I think that really what money does is it lets you build your team, and you ideally want to be strategizing around the type of team that you're going to need. Your community manager, I think, is also indispensable.
And I think, one of my observations about it is, I think most companies know what they intend to be. Not all, some crossover and have a product that's a huge hit and they company-ize and take great pain in doing that. It definitely happens. But most, I think, know whether they intend to do something that feels more like a project. And I see some things that feel like that. And some, Ouya, for example, we knew from day zero that we wanted to build a lasting company, and we happen to have a first product. And I think that mentality helps, although I think you raise a really interesting question about retail, because I just want to ask perspectives on retail, because I think a lot of this is getting much friendlier, right? Initial prototyping is friendlier, lots of technologies to do that. Funding is friendlier, ways of doing that. And then you get in the world of store shelves, which is like the world of mean people growling at you and not paying you for 90 days, if at all, and using all kinds of jargon like sell in and sell through, and you feel like you're dealing with these mystical wizards of the retail establishment. And I feel like that's a lot of pain for a lot of companies. So how should they think about this? Is retail good or bad, or how do you work with retail? Dot.
I think it depends on the company. What we've been seeing is a lot of our companies are going into retail. Like, again, it just keeps coming back. It's like right there. Biscuit Shine is in the Apple stores as well as in Target. So that's pretty incredible. This is like a year ago they were crowdfunding, now they're in the Apple stores. Incredible. And also I get approached by a lot of retailers myself of asking us how can they engage with us? How can they engage with our companies? Because they're watching.
Pay money up front, cash money. I mean, yeah. Payment terms is just like, I think, the most painful thing about the retail. I don't know. An Indiegogo section, I'm sure you guys probably already. Other thoughts about retail?
Yeah, just the huge volumes that any retail chain demands. So if there's 1,000 stores or 10,000 stores, they want 10 in each. And then, so you have to front that as a startup or a young company. And you know, no guarantee they'll sell. And it might not be right for a lot of the markets that it's going to, but they need to have inventory in each one. If you want to go to Amazon or be part of Amazon Prime, you have to be a part of 30 some odd warehouses with X number of products in each warehouse. And that's really hard for a young company. And so trying to find ways of allowing you to do smaller buys, do pilots in certain regions would be the way to go, and let a company grow into being in a large big box chain.
And do you guys sell retail?
We do through specialty retail.
What is specialty retail?
The
An
high-end
example
audio
that I
boutiques.
never understood. Okay.
They're places where people spend stupid amounts of money for things that only a small percentage of the world wants to even listen to. But my attitude on this is, actually, one piece of data that you'll get through crowdfunding that you maybe might not know. For example, Eat Pulse. So we got $1.2 million in crowdfunding for Eat Pulse. But what we also got for that is about 8 times that in letters of intent and pre-orders from different distribution channels. So you can predict exactly what it is that you're going to need to build for and over how long your life cycle of your product is going to be, where it's going to go. Now, when we did our first product, which we call Geek Out, our chief competitor comes up to me in one of these audio shows and he's like, "Gavin, we're so proud of you." You know, trying to stab me in the back. "I'm so proud of you, Gavin. You're doing such a great job. But don't worry, I'll only be worried once you've invested $5 million in the project and you have 1,400 retailers." And I remember thinking, "Oh man, he's right." And then I came back to Larry, and Larry just laughed. He's like, "No, I'll beat him with 5." And we already have more orders for Geek Out than Dragonfly has sold in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I just have one more thing to that, which is pricing. If you are going to go into retail, you've got to nail your pricing from day one. You've got to nail it before you do it on a crowdfunding site. And that's because people don't like to see the price of something increase. So if you are, when you sell into retail, your terms at best are going to take 30%, in many cases 50%. If you haven't built that kind of margin in, and you're doing bottom-up pricing, where you're saying this is my BOM and these are my salaries, you're going to underprice your product to the point where you are going to earn nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, one of my observations on that is, I think if there is any general tendency, and I think this is true for startups overall, and it's true for hardware startups in particular, it's to underprice their product at the beginning, because they believe that there's some economic equation where they're creating more demand, or they're imagining what their business looks like at scale, and those are all understandable thoughts, but generally speaking, the people who are your early buyers are also your most motivated. And so rationally speaking, you could be charging them more, but more importantly, you know what you're doing yet. So having a little extra margin to play with, even if you're selling fewer units, can be just fine, and nobody will complain if the price comes down at retail.
Well, one thing that blew me away about retail that I didn't know until I started spending a lot of time with hardware is like you pay for that end cap, the end of the aisle in the store where you see like the special deal on the paper towels or whatever, just stack for it. So like you actually pay for that positioning. You, the company. It's not that they're just giving it to you to be nice. You pay for placements and circulars. You split the difference on a Black Friday deal. Like you, the company, are on the hook for doing these things ostensibly that will generate more sales. But the reality is, that's a very, ultimately when you deal with retailers, you are responsible for knowing how to manage your own cash flows. And so having someone who is a quality CFO type figure or someone good with numbers from day one is
it's definitely like juggling torches.
When you're building your team, don't neglect the guy who's going to manage your cash flows.
All right, next question. gentleman in the back is wearing the yellow shirt, yeah.
Hi, my name is Adam from Gavin, and I'm attorney work with small companies. I'm interested in working with small hardware. So we've heard about what happens when the frustrations of having a campaign that's poorly conceived. We've heard about what happens when it's well conceived, but there's a bad management team behind it. What happens when it's so well conceived that they're overcommitted? You see a company that's out there, they're looking for 10 grand, 20 grand, and they end up walking away with 450. But in addition to that, they're walking away with a commitment to provide the products that they've offered to the people who funded them.
High-class problems.
Well, I mean, the smarter teams put caps. So Neil Lucinda, or Neil Lucida, who's a camera atlas, it was a simple kind of art project that Golan Levin did, and it raised, I think it reached their goals within about 16 hours after being put on Boing and wired. And then they went back to the manufacturer, got more commitments, and then added a higher price point for another kind of like 8,000 units. And then they capped it. And they raised a total of about 250,000. They delivered those on time. And then they handed it over to a product group who's now going to sell it, make it, and they'll get a royalty on the remainder of the product. So, I mean, they knew what their limits were. They thought of their original backers, and they went with it. But if you don't, then you're peddling, and you're late. But you still delivered, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think one of the lessons of being late or messy in how these things go is that this is a messier process. This is not how Apple does hardware, right? This is the opposite. This is like the anti-Apple way of doing hardware, and that authentic, honest, frequent communication just goes a long way, as it does in every kind of real messy process. You have a question?
Quick question for
Who are you?
Gavin. My name is John Weiss, and I run a nonprofit organization. I teach electronics to at-risk teenagers in a disadvantaged community, and we're developing a consumer product. Just a real quick question, Gavin, you mentioned pre-orders. Does that mean prepaid?
It typically came with letters of intent, and then we required prepayment before we ship.
That's retailers?
Those are distributors.
Okay,
Distribution partners.
thank you.
And to me, by the way, that's one of the strongest reasons to do a crowdfunding campaign, is the cash of it is so great. I mean, compared to trying to do a pre-order, where generally speaking, not every payment platform, but many, won't let you take a customer's money until you're ready to deliver a product. You know, the generosity of the spirit of backers, funders in a crowdfunding campaign is that, you know, they'll give you money months, years before they see a product. And that's a pretty special one